Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Som TV podcast. My name is Jason Wise. This week, the wine world lost a true original voice and somebody that was a dear friend of mine personally. His name was Steven Spurrier, and he's best known for being a part of the Judgment of Paris in 1976. But there's so much more the guy did. I want to, as someone who filmed with him in Som 3 and has filmed quite a bit coming on Som TV and our films and everything, I knew his family. I knew him well. I spent time with him on several different continents over the course of the last 3 years. I just want to say the wine world and the food world and really the education world will never, ever be the same, both because he was here and also because he is now gone. I am extremely sad, but also very proud that we will be able to continue his legacy. On today's show, I have Dustin Wilson, who is also the star of Som 3 and worked with Steven Spurrier, was at premieres with him, and in Paris for that scene where they all brought the wine that got them into wine. Dustin and I are going to reminisce a little bit about just what he meant to us. And then after that, I'm going to tell you about all of the projects we have waiting that will continue Steven's legacy. So I ask you to please stay after the interview. Right now on Som TV, coincidentally, the first of many things coming with Steven Spurrier that we had filmed throughout 2019, 2020, and 2021. It is the Verticals episode of Clos du Val, which of course Steven was integral in making the world know about. Clos du Val was part of that Judgment of Paris in 76. It was one of the few, or the only winery in America that had its wine made by a Frenchman, somebody from Bordeaux named Bernard Pertet, a brilliant, wonderful man in his own right. And that is now streaming on somtv.com or your favorite app. The episode is now dedicated to Steven Spurrier, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts about it. It's sad and also an honor to see him and how happy he is to teach and tell you about wine. Without further ado, I will speak now with Dustin Wilson, and afterwards talk to you more about the projects we have coming. Hey, Dusty, how you doing, bud?
I'm hanging in. Can't complain. Here in New York City and at home, watching over my new little baby girl and hanging with my better half and, living that COVID quarantine life and trying to stay safe and get work done and all the things that we're all experiencing right now, but can't really complain.
It's great to have you on, and I wish it was under better circumstances. Dusty, you've been in all of the films that I made as a director about wine so far, but I think all of us we enjoyed Som 3, maybe more than the others because of the company that we were able to meet during it. I remember the suicide mission of sending you from New York to Paris on very short notice to bring those bottles for Jancis and Steven and Fred to drink. I remember you being so nervous to walk into that room and to sit down at a table with Steven and Jancis. Tell me a little bit about how you were feeling about that. Tell me why you were so nervous.
Well, I was nervous to meet all three. And I don't think I've been that nervous to pour wine for people since I was taking my MS exam. I got the shakes a little bit when I went to go pour wine. I don't know if you caught that on camera. I definitely remember feeling it. But it's very rare that you walk into a room with, three kind of legends and icons in the industry like that. And I was the only person there to pour them wine. And God knows if they would have asked me some questions that I didn't know the answers to or something, I just felt super, and then you've got the cameras on you. It was a huge pressure moment. But at the same time, I couldn't help but think to myself, well, man, fuck, how lucky am I to be this person that's standing here right now in this room doing this and getting the opportunity to talk to these people and taste these wines with them and talk about it. It was such a cool moment, one that I definitely look back on with a lot of fond memories, everything from the quick turnaround and jumping on a plane to not having anything to wear and having to run down the street to go get that terrible gray sweater that I wore. But, I think the meeting all three of them, but particularly Steven, was really impactful just, with what he's done in his career and some of the kind of similar paths that we've followed, I guess, to a certain extent. It was a very cool moment.
Yeah, it really was. So Steven was a mentor for both you and I for different reasons, but a lot of the people that we still consider, our mentors are still around. What would you say to people about Steven as a mentor for you, but also what should people say to the people that have inspired them and are still around right now? Because I think every time you lose someone of the magnitude of Steven Spurrier, it kind of makes you look inward and think about the people who are still in our lives. What should people talk about to them?
Steven was a massive inspiration, and I really admire everything that he built and everything that he did for the industry. But I think, I'm a big fan of just always letting people know how much you appreciate them. You just never know when shit's going to end or things are going to go bad or you won't get the chance to say something anymore. I tend to maybe overshare and be a little too lovey-dovey sometimes and be kind of a softie with people. But to me, it's important that, when you do appreciate someone and when you do care for someone, that you tell them on a regular basis, regardless of kind of what might be going on at the time, because you just never know.
Right.
Might be the last time. Yeah.
So Steven Spurrier is known for a lot of stuff, right? I mean, he, from your angle, what is the thing he's known for? Is it the Judgment of Paris? I mean, where from where you stand is Steven famous? What is he famous for?
What is Steven Spurrier best known for? Well, I think Steven Spurrier is best known for the Judgment of Paris tasting that he put on in 1976. I don't know if he wants to be best known for that, but if I had to pick one thing, I think that's definitely the thing.
What does he mean to the wine world?
So, Steven Spurrier, I can't necessarily speak to what he means to the entire wine world. I can speak to what he meant to me, and, I can go from there. I think he clearly meant a great deal to the American wine industry. What he did with the Judgment of Paris back in 76, really, I think changed the game for certainly California, but really, I think the United States wine industry. And I think, you can extrapolate on that and say the wine industry more broadly, just because I think people no longer just assume that the best wines in the world come from France, that they can actually come from America, they can come from other places. And I think if you're going to look at one point in history where, maybe things shifted a little bit and the mindset of, where great wine can come from, that might be the moment. That might be the moment where people said, hey, it doesn't need to just come from France. It can come from anywhere. And people started searching out the next great wine region. Okay, if California won this, what's after that? And I think that search continues today. And I think a lot of the culture around finding those next new regions, those new exciting wineries, those new exciting grape varieties, et cetera, can be probably traced back quite a bit to, what Steven did at the Judgment of Paris tasting. So I think for me, what he did in that sense with that tasting really helped to open the wine world's eyes, open the world's eyes to where wine can be grown. I think that's a massively important event, not just the event itself, but kind of what it did for wine overall. So Steven, for me personally, was a huge inspiration. He had a really great wine shop, l'Académie du Vin. He was a retail guy, he was a merchant, very much like I am. And he searched out, the great wines from the world and was adventurous and tried a lot of things and didn't necessarily feel like he needed to just focus on one particular style of wine or one region. He searched out kind of the next great things. And that sense of exploration and sense of adventure in wine was something that he really embodied with his business. And I think that I'd like to think that we're the very same way with what we do at Verve and how I think about wine. So it's kind of what jazzes me up. So, I've been very much inspired with what he did with Académie du Vin and the wine school. And, I also love the fact that his little place in the world was kind of the epicenter for wine culture at that time. You think about all the great people that would come through that place, hang out late night and drink wine and pop things open and talk about wine. It was a kind of a huge cultural center for all the inner circle of the wine world during that time too. So all I can help to think about is, me and my wine buddies and our little circle of friends and people in the industry and how we all tend to kind of get together at certain points in time at specific places. And, you kind of have your haunts, your places that you go to and the people that you hang out with in this industry. When I think about what he did at his place and how his shop was kind of the space for that, it's very inspiring. So, I think he's obviously done a lot of things. He's making his own wine. He leaves behind a huge legacy. But I think for me personally, it's kind of how he changed wine culture through the Judgment of Paris tasting, and then, how he operated his business at l'Académie du Vin, that for me personally is really inspiring and really cool and will be a great thing to leave behind.
Man, I love you, Dusty. What was it like when you came to Paris and you were sitting next to him? Can you tell people who haven't had the chance, and it's so many who know of him who have not actually met him, what is his personality like? What's it like? What's his energy? What is he actually like as a person?
Yeah, he was, nothing against Jancis or Fred. He was the most fun to chit chat with on the set of Psalm 3. And if you watch Psalm 3, I mean, he's the personality that he gives off in that movie is him. He's, a gentleman. He's very smart. He's quick-witted. He's humble. He's just a super nice guy or super charming guy. It was a ton of fun to chat with him and to taste wine with him and, to be in that room and to pour him some wines that I'm excited about and hear what he had to say about them was one of the most amazing points of my entire career. So for me, that was really exciting. And then, he busted out that old port. I think that was a very British thing to do, a very Steven thing to do. But for a guy who's, kind of a generation or two, I should say, behind him in the wine industry, I don't drink port all that often. So, I drink a lot of things that he's probably not drinking all that often that are like cool for people in my generation in wine. We don't drink a lot of port. So when he busted that out and we opened it and tasted it, it was not only kind of a glimpse into, who Steven is as a person and what he likes to drink, but also just kind of a break from what I normally taste and am exposed to. And it was a hell of a great bottle. I mean, it was an amazing, amazing bottle of wine. One of the most memorable bottles of port that I've ever tasted. So that was really cool too. And, I think just how charming he is and how much of a great personality he is. And he's very approachable and he's very, very humble. I think that I loved all of that about him. And we'll miss that dearly.
Yeah, I'm going to miss him too. This is tougher than I thought it would be. I've talked to Steven a lot about this, being known for one thing or the general population thinking you've only done sort of one thing. And I think that this is something you can relate to, having been in Psalm. I'm sure you are kind of known for Psalm, but you've done a lot of things. Steven's a writer. He was a judge. He was an educator. He was a shop owner. He was a restaurateur. But people think of him just for the Judgment of Paris. And obviously, there's a lot of parallels with you on why you were in Psalm 3, and so was he. What is your kind of opinion on the idea of being known for something? Is that good or bad, or what's the feeling on that?
That's a good question. I think there are good things and there's bad things. I think the Judgment of Paris tasting did a huge thing for him in his career and catapulted him into what he became and gave him a platform that he may not have had otherwise had he not done it. The Psalm movies have done the same thing for me. So that's a really great thing. It brings a lot of opportunities. It brings, a certain amount of recognition and credibility in this industry, which is hard to do. But then, you do kind of get pigeonholed into this one thing. And, I think my career's evolved. We filmed Psalm 1 10 years ago. I passed 10 years ago now. I've done a lot of things since then. I think a lot of people tend to think I just kind of sit around all day and taste wine. And that's couldn't be farther from the truth. So, I think people tend to associate you with one thing. They don't think that you've ever kind of gotten past that one thing, or, you continue to do that one thing now, or you're just that guy that did that and there's nothing else to you. So, I have to explain my way out of no, I'm not on the floor of a restaurant anymore. And no, I don't actually taste as much wine as I used to. And no, I'm not drinking wine all the time anymore. And I'm not studying all the time anymore, to a lot of people. So you have to repeat that over and over and over again. But, it's a very small price to pay, I think, for, the exposure and the recognition and all that comes with it. So can't really complain too much.
Yeah, totally. Me too. So I think a lot about the grind of writing, hundreds, and in Steven's case, thousands and thousands of tasting notes for wine. I sort of put it with the British way of reviewing, and, Jancis and other these people, they do this where they write these detailed tasting notes one by one by one. Can you describe to me the kind of grind of doing that and what your feelings are on that kind of process? Yeah.
I mean, thankfully, I've never had to be a critic. Being a sommelier in a restaurant is, I guess in some sense, you're a critic in that you're making selections to put on your list. And, if you put it on your list, you're standing behind it. So in that sense, you could maybe be a critic, but it's not the same way as writing a tasting note for a publication and assigning a point value to it and things like that. So it's very different. So I can't really say that I understand or can empathize fully what it's like. Personally, if I had to write tasting notes all the time, I don't know what I'd do. It's like the last thing in the world that I want to do. I hate tasting notes. I hate writing tasting notes. I would never want to be doing that. So, but I think what's interesting about it and what they have the power to do is open people's eyes to new things in a much bigger way than I do as a sommelier on the floor of a restaurant, or even, as a wine shop owner. We can get people excited and exposed to new things because of by virtue of what's on the shelf or what we're putting on our social media or our website or in our email campaigns and things like that. But, it definitely does not have the same kind of reach as someone who's, a critic by profession and has that big platform of a publication like he did. So, it's a blessing and a curse probably. I think the readers are maybe looking for certain things. He's got his own personality that he brings to it. But I think for me, the exciting part of it, less about writing the tasting notes, but more about kind of discovering the new things that you get excited about, that you have, a huge platform to share that with. And it really allows you to help guide drinkers in a certain direction and get people to try new things and get people excited about stuff that they would have never heard of before. I think he did that really well in the sense that he had his style, he had his way of saying things, and he had the things that he liked. So if you became like a fan of Steven, you can kind of follow along and kind of discover new things through what he was discovering. And I think that's a very cool piece of kind of the power that they have.
Yeah, I agree. I hate to ask this question, Dusty, but what did it feel like when you found out the news that Steven had passed? I mean, we are basically 3 years to the day of filming Somm 3 in Paris, which is a weird thing to say. I mean, what went through your head when you heard this news?
Yeah, when I found out Steven passed, it was by, I think, your Instagram account or the Somm TV or Somm Films, and one of the Instagram accounts that you run. And I actually didn't believe it at first. I was like, wait, he must mean, he's so sad because of something else. It can't possibly be that Steven's passed. Like, he's fine. Like, he's fine. He still has plenty of life left in him. So at first it was I was taken aback and I was like, wait, what's going on here? And that's when I shot you a text. I was like, really? And when you said, yeah, he passed away, and, it was, I didn't know him super well personally. So, I wouldn't necessarily say that sadness was the first thing that I felt, but it was more kind of a huge recognition of the weight that man carried for the industry. There are very few people left in the industry that have had as much influence on the world of wine as he has. So to see him pass, he's a real true legend in this industry. And, it's a huge void that he's going to leave behind. So I think, I feel, I guess if I felt anything, I just felt a huge honor to have been able to meet him and spend time with him and drink wine with him and talk with him while he was alive. I feel really grateful for that because, I won't ever get to do it again. And to say that, I got to meet this man who's been an inspiration for me and an inspiration for so many and so influential in the industry it's a huge honor. Very grateful for it.
Yeah, and some of these things you don't really realize how special it is, and until you don't get to do it again. Thank you, Dustin. It's always an honor to have my friend Dustin Wilson on. I wish, of course, it was under better terms. I go back 12 years with that guy, so you're not going to be able to shake Dustin Wilson on my podcasts or on our films for a while. He's a good friend. Now, I really can't overstate the fact that Steven has been a huge part of not just the Somm films, which are coming, but also Somm TV. I mean, when we launched, he saw Somm 3 and he sort of turned to all of us, Christina Wise, who founded it with me and I am married to, and Jackson, everybody who shoots it. He turned to all of us and he said, you guys should do more of this. And of course, when you make a film, you're exhausted at the end, but to have somebody like Steven push you forward and say, we need more, I think it was a big motivation for launching Somm TV. And so as soon as we did, I reached out to him and I said, I need you to, I want you to film some stuff. I want you to be a part of it. And there was never a no. He was always so excited. If you've watched Cellar Stories, which is about a 1942 Chateau d'Yquem on Somm TV, which Steven and Dustin Wilson they sort of chart the path of this bottle and whether it's fake or not. And, he was so excited to meet me in Virginia and take a look at this bottle and see the path. Over the course of 2019, he ended up saying yes immediately to what I thought would be the fourth Somm film. I actually think it might end up being the sixth, which I can't even believe I'm telling you guys this, called The Cup of Salvation. And something I learned about Steven, and no spoilers here, but he's got some very, very impressive, very poignant scenes in the documentary, which is about the origin of wine and has a lot to do with the origin of wine and its use in religion. It's the most beautiful thing I think our team has ever made. Steven, I found out to be a very spiritual person, somebody who believed deeply in the power of faith and the afterlife and passing on your knowledge to others. And his interview that he does in the film and his scenes, they have a completely different meaning now for me. And I've watched him now since he passed, and I just can't, sometimes things blow you away with how the premonition of what is said. And this is one of those. So Steven is a major part of The Cup of Salvation, but he's also a major part of The True Story of the Judgment of Paris, which is probably our next feature film to come out about wine. It is going to come out this summer, and obviously he is a major part, but so are the untold stories of Patricia Gallagher and Joanne Dupuis and many others who really have been unsung to this point. And I want to say that Steven, he had an uncomfortability with the fact that he was always the only person talked about for the Judgment of Paris. He would always say to me, Patricia did this and Patricia did that, and she found my Icamus and she helped us pick wines. And I think this documentary, though it's a very fun documentary. It's about, rock and roll and counterculture and all of these great things. I think another thing about it is another window into the other voices that worked with Steven to do this stuff. And I think what comes across in this film coming this summer on Somm TV is that Steven was such an inclusive person. He wanted everybody to share in the success and the good things about a story. And, I'm so proud of this particular movie. One, it'll be so entertaining, but for two, we finally get to see the real story. You get to see a lot of the real Steven. You get to see his wife, Bella, and you really get to see kind of how it actually happened. He's also this is something I just can't believe we got to do. At the beginning of COVID, or sort of about halfway through COVID, Steven and I, we sat down, him in Dorset, England, and myself in Los Angeles, and we filmed a live watch of Bottle Shock. Now, he's never done this. He's only watched the film one time ever all the way through. He's famously hates the movie because Alan Rickman is, so much older than he was, and the historical accuracy in the film. Bo Barrett, who's the winemaker at Chateau Montelena, says during the, in the film, the Judgment of Paris, he says the only thing accurate about Bottle Shock was the scene where I had a joint in one hand and a beer in the other. Everything else is fake. So it's a funny thing. And of course, for somebody like Steven, that's got to be very frustrating because it omits entire characters. It omits trips. It omits. So I sat down with him, and on video, he watches it with me. And that is coming March 22nd on Somm TV, which is, earlier than we had expected to put it up. But obviously it is so timely because you get to see Steven's humor, his personality, and his he actually has some moments where he turns and says, this movie's funny. And I didn't think about it in the context of the entertainment side. I looked at it only as a historical document. And so I think he was put at ease by the fact we were actually going to try to tell the story properly. And it's wonderful. So March 22nd on Somm TV, you will get a chance to watch something that has never been done before. It is the man himself, Steven Spurrier, watching Bottle Shock with me, and we talk through the whole film. It's not to be missed, and I would recommend every single person gets a bottle of California Cab. Doesn't have to be expensive. Go to the grocery store and sit down and watch this movie. Either watch the movie or watch the live watch with Steven and laugh, because that's what he would want. The last thing I would also say is he's a part of many series and other things coming. And, I think that this is the legacy that the Steven I know would want, is to continue teaching people. And the fact that we get to do that with him is the reason I do this job. And so I want to say to everybody here, thank you so much for listening. Please say a toast and thank the people who inspire you to do what you do. And also go to Somm TV and watch that Verticals episode, which is dedicated to the memory of our friend Steven. Everybody be safe. Have a good glass, and we'll talk soon.